At this time, without yielding the floor, I'd like to entertain a question from the senator from Pennsylvania.
Senator from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank the senator from Kentucky for raising, I think, a very, very important issue. And I would just like to kind of walk through a little bit of clarification so that I understand clearly exactly what's transpired here and the exact question to which the senator from Kentucky would like a response. From my perception, my understanding is this seems like a very simple and basic request. And so I'm surprised that we don't have a simple and straightforward answer. So I wonder if the senator from Kentucky would just summarize briefly for me so that I understand clearly the exact request that you made to the administration.
Mr. President, in late January, we sent a letter to John Brennan, the nominee for the CIA, asking a bunch of questions, but included among those questions was, can you kill an American in America with a drone strike? And we got no response, and no response, and no response. Thanks to the intervention of the ranking member on the Intelligence Committee, as well as members from the opposite aisle on the Intelligence Committee, we finally got an answer about 2 days ago. The answer from John Brennan was that he acknowledges the CIA cannot act in the United States. That is the law, and that was nice. But the Attorney General responded and said that they don't intend to, they haven't yet, but they might.
And am I correct in understanding that that's currently the state of play? That's the most recent response you've gotten in writing from the administration?
Mr. President, that's the only direct response I've gotten. I've also read the testimony from the Judiciary Committee where the senator from Texas cross-examined the Attorney General, who responded indirectly to my question by saying it was inappropriate. It was inappropriate, we probably wouldn't do that, but wouldn't answer directly whether it was unconstitutional or not. It appears at the end that he may have said that it would be unconstitutional to kill non-combatants. Should be a pretty simple answer. And really, that's all I'm asking. I can be done anytime if I could just get a response from the administration or from the Attorney General saying that they do not believe they have the authority to kill non-combatants in America.
Well, Mr. President, further follow-up on further clarification here. If the administration seems to be unwilling to state unequivocally that they recognize that they do not have the legal authority to kill a non-combatant American on American soil, did they suggest under what circumstances they would? Did they suggest a process by which they would identify an American citizen non-combatant on American soil that might be subject to being killed by a drone strike?
Well, Mr. President, there's been a white paper that was released that goes through a series of things. They do have a step or a process they go through in determining who to kill. The problem I have is that in foreign countries, I don't know the exact number because it's classified, but in foreign countries, many of the people being killed aren't actively engaged in combat. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong or making an opinion on that, but I'm saying that's not a standard I can live with in the United States. So let's say a third of the drone strikes are going against people that are eating dinner with their family or walking down the road or sleeping in their house. If that is our standard and we're going to do drone strikes in America, I can't tolerate or I can't live with myself if I would accept a standard in the United States that would allow that to happen here.
Well, Mr. President, I think, judging from the response, what I understand is that there is a standard that applies overseas, but we haven't gotten, correct me if I'm mistaken, but we haven't gotten a definitive word as to whether that same standard would apply domestically to American citizens or not.
Go ahead.
And just to say, and if we haven't gotten a definitive answer, then it seems to me, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but then it would suggest to me that we have no idea what standard would be used. And I can't imagine that we would find it acceptable to be in a situation where an administration would suggest that using a drone to kill an American non-combatant on American soil without even disclosing the process by which they would determine that that was appropriate. This is kind of hard to understand. Am I understanding it incorrectly?
Well, Mr. President, the interesting thing about this is for many years, no one would talk about the drone strike program at all. And then recently, one of the former spokesman for the president said he was instructed to never say it existed. But now that it is in the open, the president a week ago was asked at Google, when he was there for an interview, he was asked, can you do this? And his answer was, well, the rules would probably have to be different inside than outside. But that implies that he thinks he can do it inside in America. And then the question really becomes, what are those rules? And this is as much about the checks and balances of, they say we have the ability to advise and consent. This is some friendly advice I'm giving to the president today, is that he ought to think about, and we should think about as a body, whether we are a check and balance to the power of the executive, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat. To me, I think it's immaterial that no president should have the power to make these decisions, unilaterally.
Well, Mr. President, I'll finish up here, but I just want to make 2 points here. One is I think we ought to have a robust debate about the circumstances under which we would use drone strikes overseas and understand the implications. Think about this. We have what is still, to the United States, a relatively new threat in the form of these non-state actors, these terrorist organizations that are sometimes affiliated with each other, sometimes not, scattered around the globe. This is new. In addition, we have new technology that we never had before. It wasn't terribly long ago that the idea of flying an unmanned drone and using it to kill a person that could be hundreds or thousands of miles away, that was completely implausible. Now, of course, we have the ability to do it. When new circumstances and new technology come to bear, we ought to have a discussion about when and whether and how it's appropriate to use that. When we're talking about American non-combatants on American soil, I think the starting point ought to be we're not going to do that. And the onus ought to be on whoever's got an explanation for when and whether and why and under what circumstance we would. And that ought to be debated very, very carefully and thoroughly. And until such time, I think ought to be easy to acknowledge that this is not going to take place. And if we can't get a direct answer to that question, then I have to say I think the senator from Kentucky is performing an important service in putting a spotlight on this. And I commend him for doing it, and I thank him for doing it. And with that, I finish with my questions.
Well, Mr.